Okay, I wanted to continue on this idea of modes and the Nashville number system, and talk about major harmony and I guess maybe song composition from a chord perspective, a chord structure perspective, or chord progression you might call it, which is really just a sequence of chords. And I think what I'll try to do is limit my examples to like four chord progressions or less, just to keep things simple. So I want to talk really quickly about what they call like the one chord. You've heard people say it's a 1 6 2 5 progression, and so according to the Nashville numbering system, if you're playing in the key of G major, for example, the one chord would be G major itself. Okay, the two chord would be A minor, and so on for each of the, and you can look at my other video on the Nashville numbering system. It's the same. So the Nashville number system and each of the modes, they line up 1 to 1. First mode is the one chord. The Ionian mode is the one chord. The Dorian mode is the two chord. The Phrygian mode is the three chord. The four chord is the Lydian. The five chord is Mixolydian. Sixth chord is the Aeolian mode. Seventh is the Locrian mode. And all of which yield their own types of each of those modes, of course, can be broken down into their own chords, which I've shown you before. But I guess what I wanted to do was talk about what those in the construct of like harmony and chord progressions and the idea of cadence. And if you don't know what a cadence is basically a way of describing how chords go from being a progression of chords go from feeling unresolved to resolved, or what I think is maybe better is how chords go from being restless to restful. Well, there's a sense of resolution you might hear, or people say chord resolution. Well, this idea of chord, you resolve this chord to this chord, you get this from tension to release, or from restlessness to restfulness. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is like what each of those chords do, and basically what is their relative level of rest. Are they restless? Are they restful? And there's kind of a scale. There's sort of like you're sort of very restless or very restful, and then there's points in the middle. So you could probably, I'm sure people will argue with this, but in major harmony, assuming your home chord or your most restful chord is generally speaking that one chord. You're going home to the one chord in your major harmonies. So for example, what I want to do, I guess, really quickly is play each of the different chords and compare them, or listen to how intense the resolution is against all of its different counterpart chords. So I'm going to play in G major. So my one chord, of course, is G major. So listen to G major next to the two chord. you can feel that this restfulness when we come back to that one chord. Well, let's try that against the 3 chord, which is a A minor, by the way. It's got a different flavor compared to the 2 chord. You can sort of hear a. It does feel like it's unstable or a little restless. There's so let's try the 4 chord, which is a a C major. I would argue there's more compared to the 2 chord and the 3 chord. There's more of a sense of like release, you know, compared to the 3 and even the 2. So let's listen to the 5 chord, which of course is D. It's almost like I was thinking about this today. It's almost as if the movement of chords is like variations of breath, you know, where hitting the 1 chord is like kind of like an exhale, like a right, and that is almost an inhale, and then an exhale, an inhale, an exhale. There are just varying degrees of how deep those are. Maybe that's a bad example. Let's hear what the 6 sounds like next to that one. I'm gonna play the 6. Where should I play the 6? I guess I'll play the 6 up again like the others, which is an E minor. Play it down here. There's a sameness to those kind of chords. They just fit so easily together. There doesn't seem to be a lot of tension and release between those 2 intervals. And now I'll play the 7th, which is I'll play this here at the F sharp, which is the 7 chord, which is actually the diminished chord. Oops. Definitely a lot of tension there. It doesn't sound restful, but so you can hear that each of these, relative to the 1 chord, there's varying degrees of of tension, and you want to use that when you're writing songs. So, you know, you'll hear that first progression that I called out. You know, this a very typical, used in probably thousands of songs. This 1 6 2 5 chord progression, which would be G to E minor to A minor to D. So it's restful, a little less restful, a little more tension, a lot more tension, restful. So you can play with that. You can play with that idea, right? You can start moving things around. Maybe taking that that progression and try changing some things around. Maybe inserting, swapping the chords around. Maybe we start on the 1. Maybe we go to the 2. And then maybe we go to the 6. Then maybe we go to the 5. It just has a different flow or different sequence of tension and release. A little less maybe obvious, but I'm sure even that progression, you know, is being used in hundreds of songs as well. I think I want to end this by just showing ways you can maybe, you know, if you're writing a song and you want to maybe add more tension or ease off some of the tension, you know, some of the chords you might substitute in place if you know you're moving towards a, you know, some kind of a gold tone or a home tone, like that 1 chord, you know. The most typical progressions you'll see, here's a really common progression. It's a 1 4 2 5 progression. Right? And here you can see we went from restful to restless, and continuing with restlessness on the 2, and then sort of very restless on the 5. But you can change that stuff around. So, you know, you could rewrite that to go from 1 to very restless to less restless to less restless. See, I just went from 1, so I went from the 1 to the 5 to the 4 to the 2 chord, and they're all kind of, there's a sameness to that that chord progression, and you want to experiment with stuff, especially if you feel like you're writing the same things, by understanding those varying degrees of restfulness in those chords and how they relate to each other. It's a useful device to build ebb and flow, this inhale and exhale, and you know, to build some drama, I guess, into your chord progressions. The main thing is that there's no rules. You know, play whatever sounds good to your ears. What I've shown you here is really just, you could pick up in, you know, any basic harmony book that talks about the functions of each of those kinds of chords, and you know, and what functional roles they play in in chord progressions, major chord progressions that resolve towards, you know, what they call the tonics. So yeah, play around with them. There's no rules, but I think that's an interesting exercise, is to you know, try playing your home chord and play other chords next to it and see how they feel. And they don't necessarily have to be in the same key either. I mean, in fact, a lot of times people will manipulate them to add even you know, greater levels of tension. Everything I've shown you here is it's all in the key of G. There's no accidentals. You know, just for like, I'll end with one last example. That last progression I showed you, where it was, you know, 1 to the 4 to the 2, which is a minor, to the D, back to the G. Well, that progression has been played hundreds of times in hundreds of songs, you know, like this. To the 4, but then instead of playing a minor, they'll play a major. So does that work? I think so. It's subtle. Anyways, I'm gonna post more on this subject because it's fascinating, I find, and it's interesting once you kind of get a basic idea of like what some would call like the rules. You start breaking the rules and coloring outside the lines, you know, and I love to do that. So, anyways, I know it's a long video. And I hope that you find this thought-provoking, at least. Anyway, comments, criticisms, kick-me's, as I like to call them. Until my next video.